Welcome back to Michigan Sports Media Network. And as always, I am here with our Tigers reporter, Brad Thompson, and our Red Wings reporter, James Gullett. And obviously, NFL is going crazy. It's NFL free agency. But as always, we're going to start it off with something a little bit different so we can have the longer discussion later. With that being said, I am going to pass it over to James today to start off with some Red Wings talk and get this show on the road. So, James, the floor is yours.
All right. Hey, Hockey Town. I just wanted to start off, and I have to start off with the almost goal slash the goal that never was by Lucas Raymond there at the end of the game. In case you are not as familiar with hockey as some other sports, it is not like football where if you get the snap off, you can just continue the play, or basketball where as long as the ball leaves your hand, it's alive until it goes in or not. The puck has to be 100% past the line. So even if it is on top of the line when time expires, it's just no goal. And unfortunately, down by one, Raymond had a shot that beat the goalie, who was seemingly unstoppable all night long. He had over 40 saves this night. And the puck was behind him, heading towards the net. The clock hit zero before it went in the back. And literally a half a second more, and we at least go to overtime, get 1 point, potentially can come back to win. Um, but it is almost a curse at this point in time because the Wings, I will give them credit. I've been obviously harsh on them for obvious reasons if you've been watching the games lately, but they had a hell of an effort. They were on fire. They put shot after shot. They just ran into a hot goalie. It felt like a playoff hockey game. There was really nothing they can do, and they threw the kitchen sink at the guy. So, what a game if you were a Senators fan. I mean, a good game if you're a Wings fan, besides the last point 0.5 seconds. Um, but I can at least give them their flowers for they came out there, they competed, they tried. Ottawa right now is in the playoff spot, so it's not like we lost to some nobody. The Wings unfortunately fall because of the loss in regulation even further down the poll. Uh, I wish I had better news to report, but prior to this current now 6 game losing streak, we had a 52.3% chance of making the playoffs. That is down to 7.3. So in the last 6 games alone, we lost 45% of our playoff chances. So it is not unfathomable that we can come back, but it is under 10% right now. Today's game against the Buffalo Sabres should be a game we can come back from. Buffalo is even below us in the rankings. They are coming off a win in their last game. However, before that win, they were on an 0-7 streak themselves. So they are only 1-7 their last 8 games, but they are coming off a win. So hopefully we can break their streak against them. Or if we don't, they hand us our seventh loss in a row, and hopefully we can break it on the next one. But that is going to be tough to do. Both teams combined over their last 13 games are combined 1-12. So it should be a really exciting hockey match for any of the non-diehards out there that are going to sit through this. Uh, it's just going to be a rough one. Yeah, hopefully, I mean, I don't want to be a broken record here. I said this the last 2 or 3 podcasts. Hopefully, this is the one that kicks them in the ass and gets them in gear. Although, like I said, they did play that way. It needs to result in wins, not just effort. At this stage in the playoff race, there is no such thing as a moral victory. We did look better, but we lost. It is what it is. Um, to hopefully boost us. I did see that the Red Wings are going to wear their outdoor uniforms again, the ones that they wore in the shoe for the outdoor games against Columbus. I saw someone on X say, why would they do that? They are 0-2 while wearing them. However, they're 0-4 their last 4 games that they didn't wear them. So I don't know if that's really going to make a difference, what uniform they're wearing. And then lastly, I will have to end it on the Peter Mrazek note. Uh, I did not see a confirmed report, but all the early morning skates and practices say Peter Mrazek is going to be our goalie tonight. And It's his first start for us since the trade for Joe Veleno. And in his last complete game that he has started for the Blackhawks, he allowed 5 goals on only 21 shots. So he is coming off not a great performance in his last complete game. And to make the matters worse, his last start, he got pulled after the first period alone, where he allowed 5 goals on 15 shots. So over his last 80 minutes of hockey, Peter Mrazek has allowed 10 goals. So we are banking on him to help turn around this 0-7 streak. Let's make it happen, guys.
Yeah, and that's I'm glad you ended on that because that's kind of where I was gonna go with it too. I really liked the what the coach said about his plan with Mrazek. He basically said like I'm butchering the quote because I don't remember his exact words, but he basically was like, I don't give a shit what your name is. It's whoever blocks the most goals from going in. He was like, that's just who we're going to run with. So, but yeah, this is definitely a big game for them. But with that being said, Brad, do you have anything for that?
Yeah, I do. We're talking about uniforms. Hey, how about they come out with all black, solid black? You know why? Because they're dead. All right, it's a funeral. They're dead. Okay, I'm to the point where you know what? Back up the trucks, break out the pooper scoopers, get a freaking shovel, bury them, cover them up. I'm out. I'm out. They're horrible. Now here's a stat for you. 2 years ago, 7 game losing streak. February into March. Okay? Last year, 7 game losing streak. February into March. What's happening this year? Oh, that's right. It's going to be a seventh one tonight. Yes, it is. It's going to be 3 sevens. So, and in being serious now, bringing it back serious, this falls on leadership. And when I say leadership, Todd McClown's done an amazing job. Leadership falls on Dylan Larkin. When you let that happen, not once, not twice, but going on 3 times now, that falls on you. Okay? Obviously, I don't know what's going on in that locker room. All right? But something's not going on. All right? There's just nothing. They're dead. They're listless. I can't sit there and say Larkin saw because I don't know for a fact. On the ice, I mean, I hate when people say, oh, they got to get somebody to protect them. No. This is a new day in Asia hockey. I wouldn't want somebody saying, I've got to have somebody protect me. Okay? Not cool. All right? He is not one of those European style figure skaters, with the shield all the way over his face. All right? He's a goddamn water 40. He's from my hometown. We ain't soft. All right? We ain't pansies. Okay? Nut up, Dylan. Nut up. Because right now, I don't think you're showing leadership at all. All right? Guys, I mean, you can sit there and if they win the night say, ooh, yeah, all right, cool, man. No, they're done. They're dead. I give them probably, if they're lucky, they'll get about 7 more points till the end of the season. And they'll wind up with the lottery again, and they'll get fucked again in the lottery. And we'll just start it all over again. Year 7 of the Iser plan. Woohoo! That's all I got.
Yeah, and I appreciate that insight, Brad. But be prepared because now we're going to the Tigers and we're going to pass it right back to you.
All right, sounds good. Little bit of better news. Casey Mize. Holy jeez, you talk about doing a 180. And I'm about ready to say, you know what? It's not early. It's not just spring training. This dude hit triple digits today. And I was talking to a big Tiger guy at work. We're having parent-teacher conferences. We're sitting on our asses because no parents show up. Um, he's never hit triple digits. He didn't do it in college. He didn't do it here. He hit triple digits 6 times today. That's pure smoke. That's cheddar. All right, that is so encouraging. Can he sustain it? Who knows? But he's found another gear. He's found another level. His split fingers dropping more. His slider we talked about on Monday looks phenomenal. Looks fantastic. Struck out the side of the 3rd inning. Had 5 strikeouts overall in 3. So I'm almost ready to buy all the way in. I don't want to jinx it. Hey, if he can pitch like that, and he can come in and you're getting that out of your number 5 starter, well, then we got a good thing going on here. All right, so that's great news because they're going to need to limit the runs. And the reason they're going to need to limit the runs is because I personally, I'm not a doctor, but I did stay at a Holiday Inn last night. I don't think Parker Meadows, there's a feeling it. I'm thinking this dude's going to be out for a long time. Before we jumped on here, I was just reading where starts with an M. I'm not even going to try to pronounce it, but it's a nerve and it's literally dead right now. He's got a dead nerve in his arm. A dead nerve. Okay, what are you going to do? You're going to give it CPR? I mean, you're going to shock it? You're going to get a defibrillator or whatever? It's a dead nerve. That's not good. That's not good. So I couldn't tell you when he's coming back. The scary thing is you can read between the lines. They don't know when he's coming back. So hey, if he comes back early, great. But guys, I wouldn't count on him. Vierling coming back before the start of the season. He's not going to start the season. What we have an issue with now is Winsale Perez, who was going to be the center fielder. He hasn't played in 8 games. Lower back stiffness. I think we all know backs, they're a messy thing. Okay, it's not you can't just say, oh, he's back from a back. Those things linger. Those things flare up. So literally, 3 of our outfielders who are going to be prominent playing out there, well, no, all of a sudden they're not. Telltale for me is Riley Green started in the center field today. So obviously they want to get him. I would say they want to get him ready. They would not have. Riley Green is the best defensive left fielder in baseball. He's the best. So you're robbing Peter to pay Paul. If you got to do that, there's an issue. You're going to put Riley Green in center field. He's going to do fine. He's going to do above average. He might even do good. Okay, but he is a lead in left field. We go into the season like this fine. We talked about them staying 2 games above or below 500. That would be so optimal. It really would. But if we're talking in May and we're talking about Vierling and Meadows still out, and they want to contend, you're going to have to go down. You're going to have to look at it. I really want, I'll bring up some names next podcast, but you're going to have to trade for a major league proven center fielder, a leadoff type that plays great defense. If we're in May, they're going to have to look seriously about it, I should say. And if you have to give up a Kevin McGoingle, Max Clark is a sacred cow. If you have to give up a McGoingle, if you have to give up a Lee, if you have to give up a Bryce Rayner, our number 1 pick last year, I think you got to do it. I mean, we're looking to win the Central. With the Yankees losing Garrett Cole, the American League is up for grabs. So this is a winnable league now, and we got our shot, but we're not going to have our shot without a legitimate center fielder out there. So that's pretty much all I have. I really don't want the doom and gloom, but let's focus on Casey Mize because he was a flat-out stud again today. So let's roll with him. That's all I got.
All right, thanks, Brad, for the Tigers update this time around. Now, thankfully, things are looking a little bit, things are looking up for the Tigers right now. So that's always good. But with that being said, we'll be pivoting to. Oh yeah, go ahead.
Sorry, I wanted to jump in real quick on the Tigers while they're a topic. I was just curious if Brad was able to watch the game today.
Say that again?
I was curious if you were able to watch the Tigers game today.
I did not watch the Tigers game today. I caught clips of it from MIL and also from Evan Petzold.
Okay, I just was going to ask your I just wanted to ask your thoughts on Torkelson.
How many did he hit?
He only had 1, but he also had 4 RBIs.
Okay, well, again, let me preface this. It's not like the guy came over and took a shit in my bed, okay? This is not personal, all right? He didn't hit on my wife. He didn't ask to take my daughter out, all right? And he didn't steal my dog, okay? So this isn't personal. This is business. Dude, again, Casey Mize figuring it out. Spencer Torkelson figuring it out. Javi Baez figuring it out. Guys, this puts you in. That's a huge step forward. Okay. And with Torkelson, I think AJ kind of alluded to. There's an old saying, "Hey, if you can hit, we can find. They'll find you a place to play." And hey,
Oh,
these are not just flash in the pans. I mean, like I said, it's not personal; it's business with Torkelson. So I did not know that, and that's tremendous news.
Oh, absolutely all of your criticism about Torkelson on past podcasts was warranted and very valid. I just get amusement that as soon as we start the podcast and say negative things about him, he rights the ship, apparently. I wish the Red Wings could do that, but at least Torkelson, so far, it's.
Yep. I mean, put it this way: in my personal life, people love to prove me wrong, and people love to tell me that I'm wrong. So this time, I will be so happy that I'm wrong. So let me say this for good luck: the Red Wings will not win another game all year long. They're pure ass. Okay, they're total trash. All right. Launch Dylan Larkin into the sun. Okay, now hopefully that'll turn the luck around.
I was going to have a hat trick tonight. Thank you.
Yeah. All right.
Yeah, that would be the perfect outcome of that, wouldn't it? Now
Yeah.
moving on to the Pistons. We have this will be a pretty quick one today. Not too much has changed really since the last time we talked. They won against Washington last night. Cade had another good game, 27 points, 8 boards, 10 assists, almost a triple double. Duran, ever since the game he had a couple days ago, probably last week now, he's really bounced back. He's been better, offensively, defensively. He's been catching lobs and throwing it down, looking like the Duran that we saw throughout the season. So pretty much what I said or what I thought was happened with him, and it was just a bad night. But with that being said, playoff seeding. Our win against Washington moved us up the playoff seeding just a little bit. I think we're still technically the 6th seed as of right now, but we do have one win more than Indiana and Milwaukee, so that can kind of change things as games are played. But just something to keep an eye on. And then last thing I got is Devin Booker. Okay, the Pistons right now are the betting favorites to land Booker. And it sounds like a package is not going to be anything near what we thought it would be, right? I'm hearing a lot of Jaden Ivey and maybe another player and a couple picks. Do I think that'll happen? Probably not. I think it'll probably take Jaden Ivey, Tobias Harris in 2 to 3 firsts minimum. I could also see them asking for a Ron Holland in that trade, which really isn't that bad, honestly. I think I would do that deal just because, like, Booker is literally exactly what you need for Cade as a running mate. And then really all you need to do is re-sign Malik Beasley, maybe get another backup center, and another wing. And I think the Pistons are pretty much ready to go. I mean, they're not going to be, betting favorites. They're not going to be, looked at like the Boston Celtics are by any means. But we could be talking about the Pistons being a legit contender, a top 3 seed in the East. So, with that being said, I will pass it over to you, James, and you can take the floor if you have anything on that.
I would absolutely love to see Devin Booker in a Pistons jersey. That might, uh, the only thing I would probably rather see in terms of Detroit sports, besides like a championship, would be Devin Booker in a Pistons jersey. Um, Basketball is my weakest sports, the one I watch the least, but I am always on social media. I always follow people that follow basketball. I always see articles, retweets, et cetera, et cetera. Devin Booker is from, I believe, Grand Rapids, but he's from Michigan. And he always, I mean, still to this day, even after being in Phoenix for however many years he's been over there, 6, 7, he's still constantly, like I saw him, a picture of him and Dylan Larkin at a charity golf event, and he was still wearing like an old English D hat, and he always represents the city of Detroit. And I remember when he was a draft prospect and he said how bad he wanted to be a Piston. So like this is the Pistons version of Hutch, someone that went to school here, someone that was born and raised here, someone that wants to be here. And it's just such a good story. And not only is it a good story, he's also obviously a phenomenal basketball player. Even myself, who doesn't watch a ton of basketball, of course I know who he is. Of course I know what he can do. I'm not that under a rock. But between the feel-good story and his playability, and as much as I love Cade Cunningham, but I mean, I think Devin Booker would probably be the face even over Cade. I think that's debatable, but it seems too good to be true. And for that fact alone, I'm going to say it's probably not going to happen.
Yeah, and that's valid. I mean, I think most likely scenario is he probably does stay in Phoenix because it's most likely that they trade away, Kevin Durant and Bradley Beal, or at least try to, which Bradley Beal's no trade clause has kind of gotten in the way with that. But the thing about Booker is, a lot of people forget he took that Phoenix Suns team to the NBA Finals without Kevin Durant, without Bradley Beal. He did that with Chris Paul and uh, who's the big man? I'm forgetting his name. Plays for the
Anytime?
Trailblazers now, but yeah, DeAndre Ayton. I think about that now. Chris Paul, right? Good call. Chris Paul, he's on the Spurs now. He's a backup point guard for the most part. He's not really doing too much. I mean, obviously this was a few years ago, but even the year after that, Chris Paul was not seen as some elite, player by any means. And then DeAndre Ayton, he got traded for, I mean, not a whole lot. So if you look at it that way, like they traded for Kevin Durant to try to move over the top, and it just didn't work out. I'm not really sure why. If you ask me, I think it's because they didn't prioritize depth once they made that move. Because I think if they would have just kept Booker and KD and kind of built around those guys, they would have been better off. But then they had to add Bradley Beal, and I think that kind of derailed, their success a little bit. But one more thing before I pass it over to you, Brad. Um, Actually, Devin Booker, kind of a funny story about him. One of my high school football coaches actually coached his AAU basketball team. So I was hearing about Devin Booker since, he was, I want to say like 17 was probably when I first like they were talking about him because he was like known as a good high school prospect and was, they were talking about where he was going to commit and all this. So like for a couple of years, I was, Devin Booker, where's he committing? What's going on here? And then I just remember like when my coach was telling us about the draft and how he's getting to go to the draft and how he's probably going to get picked at 3 or picked at 7 or whatever the case. And kind of piggybacking off of what you said, he's always wanted to be a Piston, man. He is a Detroit kid through and through, Michigan boy. Obviously, from what I can remember, he spent half of his year in Michigan and the other half, I believe, in Mississippi, because I think his dad lived up here and his mom lived down there, or vice versa. I can't remember exactly on that. So he's not like necessarily Michigan born and bred type of guy, but he lives that way. You know what I mean? He's a Michigan boy for sure, like you said. So, just kind of a cool tidbit, some little timeline crossing there. But with that being said, Brad, the floor is yours.
All right, hey, I want to bring it back to last night with the Pistons, and at halftime, Natalie Kerwin entered. It was just right before a little scrum too, and she got Jalen Duren when he was still little. He was still a little intense, and he goes. She asked him about this. He goes, man, we love this. He goes, we live for this. He goes, bring it. We want it. Now, that's the exact same quote you'd see in a 1989, 1990 Bad Boys locker room. In fact, I'm thinking if Duran's got this kind of mentality, he could have been a bad boy. And when you say someone could have played on the Bad Boys, that is the highest praise you can say in Detroit basketball. And I'm thinking, whoo, this guy, okay, good deal. Uh, the the lobs from Cade to Duran, teams know they're coming by now. They know they're coming, and it's pick your poison. If you want to go with Duran, Cade will pull up and he'll dagger you. If you step out on Cade, guess what? You're getting thunder kissed, all right, by Duran. All right. So we've got something special going on here. We really do. Uh, with Devin Booker, I don't think I don't think he's going to be traded. I think that other pieces will be moved. Knowing a little bit about Matt Ishbia and myself, because I actually coached him in baseball way long ago, the dude is a flat-out competitor. The guy competes in business. he competes in everything. I don't know if you guys knew this, but he was a 12th man on the 2000 national championship Michigan State Spartan team. All right, they used to be called him the Human Victory Cigar because when he was in, it was over. All right, but no, he's not good. I would be shocked if he lets Booker go. He would probably say, everybody else, you can get the fuck out. I'm keeping Devin Booker because he knows, heart and soul and things like that. Now, if it doesn't work and Booker says, hey, I want out, I want out, I want out, call up the Pistons and say, the Pistons should say, hey, who do you want outside of Thompson, Duran, Cade, and I'm thinking Thompson, Duran, Cade, and that would probably be it right now. Beasley is a free agent. We got to sign him back, so wouldn't count him. But, dude, take him. Take who you want. I personally think it would require a Jaden Ivey, a Holland, who Holland's going to be pretty damn good. First round draft pick. Jaden Holland, Marcus Sasser, but I think you're looking at 3 number ones too. You're looking at 3 number ones. Now they get Booker, then all bets are off, and anything can happen with that ball club. Anything can happen. So I'm all for it as long as you keep the core in place, and that's all I got.
Yeah, so that's a good point. And really, the only thing I would say about that is we have to match salaries. And for that to happen, Tobias Harris has to be included. And I don't even know if Tobias Harris, Ivy, and Holland would even match because Devin Booker's making over 50 million this year, per year. So like it's going to kind of be weird to make that trade happen anyway. And I also am kind of in the camp of I don't think he's going to be traded. I mean, think about it. Like I just said, he took the team to the finals, right? He's 29. He's not 34. You know what I mean? He's not 36 like Steph Curry is. He's a guy that realistically the Suns have under contract, I think, for the next 3 to 4 seasons. And I mean, there's really no need to trade him. Even if they suck, even if they're terrible, you keep a guy like that just to kind of keep asses in seats, at that point. So I'm glad you brought that up. And, so if you're watching this, it's because you love sports. If you love sports, why not show that love with some new gear, like the 2 jerseys behind me? Fanatics has a lot of stuff on sale right now, and if you go down in the description, click the link of whatever team that you want. It'll take you to the Fanatics page, buy some stuff, and we get a small portion. It'll help us out, and you'll get some discounts on some good gear. With that being said, we're going to move on from the Pistons now, and we'll move on to some Lions news, what everybody really wants to hear, what we're all really itching to talk about. So far, not today, mostly today, I guess I should say, the Lions re-signed Levi Onwuzurike to a 1-year, $5.5 million deal, which I personally love. I love that move. Definitely cheaper than I thought it would be. I don't love that it's on a 1-year deal, but at the same time, you ain't getting him for that cheap for multiple seasons. And this is obviously one of those Brad Holmes prove-it deals that he loves to give out to guys who have high potential but have injury concerns or whatever the case. And Levi's coming off that back injury, so a lot of teams, from what I've heard, a lot of teams were very worried about that, and they didn't want to give him much money or a long-term deal. So he just kind of decided, I'd rather go back to Detroit if I got to prove it for a year because maybe I can win a Super Bowl. And then, with that being said, I do believe Levi, I saw a stat today, he was in the top 5 in pressure rate among all free agent players. And that's just kind of crazy because he's a guy we kind of played out of position a lot this year because of our injuries. He played a lot of, 5 tech or out, which he's more of a 3 tech, I think. He could play 5, but I just don't personally love putting him there. And I mean, the tape kind of speaks for itself. He wasn't that great there this year. So with that being said, I wonder what he could have done if we played him in position all year with Hutch, with Aleem, with Smith, with all these guys we had. I think he would even had a better year, and at that point probably would have outpriced himself from us. So I love the signing. It seems like he kind of took a bit of a hometown discount. But then also we signed Grant Stewart, the linebacker from Indianapolis. He is more of a depth piece, of course. The money hasn't even been, reported yet. But it's a 1-year fully guaranteed deal, and that I would assume is probably less than $2 million. So it's not going to really hurt us much in the cap space world. by any means. But with that being said, he is a depth player, but he's been pretty damn good in the times that he's played. Colts fans, which shout out to James for this one. Colts fans have apparently been saying, he throws his body around and just doesn't give a shit. Plays with his hair on fire. Something I saw from the Lions special team coordinator Dave, I think it's Dave Phipp. He said that's where I got the hair on fire quote. He said Stewart is one of his favorite players, like period. He said the way that he plays, his aggression, his physicality is just amazing, which tells me it's a special team signing for the most part, and he'll play some rotational linebacker at best, which I'm totally fine with. That sounds great to me. But that will be, I think, our fourth special team specific player that we've signed. And that's just a little confusing. So I just don't. We'll see. I'm sure somebody's going to get cut. I would assume it's going to be one of the guys that we re-signed, just mainly because we gave this guy a fully guaranteed contract. But with that being said, he did have a 69.4 overall grade on PFF and a 70.1, I believe, run D grade and something in the 68s in terms of pass defense. So he's still a solid player when he does play. But moving on from that, let's talk about some players that are available that could help us out on the pass rush front. Some pass rushers that are left to sign. There's some solid players, nobody crazy, but some decent guys still available. We have young guys like Aziz Ojulari. We have Josh Uche, who's I think 27. And then we have some older guys, like Von Miller and Zadarius Smith and Matt Judon and Calais Campbell. And then we have some, more of rotational guys for sure that will really only be rotational, like Charles Omenihu and Dennis Gardeck. I still think there's a lot of solid pass rushers available, though. And if we sign two of them to like under $10 million each, I'll be happy with that. I'll take two for the price of one, especially when a guy like DeMarcus Lawrence just got $14 million per year over the next three. He's one guy I really liked for that same amount of money, but 1 year. 3 years, and I think they gave him like 25 million of it guaranteed. That's too much for a guy that's going to be 35 by the end of the contract you gave him. So hopefully Brad Holmes has a plan. I'm sure he's got some tricks up his sleeve to go and get us some pass rushers. He's obviously been, trying to make things happen. And speaking of that, we did also sign Roy Lopez, the defensive tackle from Arizona, who I think is way better than a lot of people are making him sound. He's not like an elite, game wrecker by any means. He's not going to come in and be Aaron Donald for us. But what he will be is a very good rotational defensive tackle. I would say pass rusher, but I think he's pretty good against the run as well. He's more of a nose, but I think he could play anywhere from a 0 to a 3, maybe a 4. I don't know. I don't think I'd really put him at a 4 or a 5, but he might be able to. But he's a good pass rusher, is aggressive with his hands and his feet. He never stops moving. He gets doubled all the time. I was watching film on him earlier, and it seemed like he got doubled after the snap every play. And one play I really loved that he made was he had a strip sack on Josh Allen. And basically he got doubled immediately, right? He's hand fighting, he's trying to drop through, and then the guard has to go help on the defensive end, the pass rusher. And what happened is he goes to help, and Roy Lopez notices he's one-on-one and just beats his man, gets to Josh Allen, knocks the ball away. Now, that was his only sack on the season, so small sample size, but I really liked what I saw from that. And then moving on to the big news of the day for the Lions is Kevin Zeitler has signed with the Titans on a 1-year, $9 million deal. Absolute gut-wrencher, heartbreaker. I've said on this podcast, I think it was Monday, I was saying I'm 100% for sure Zeitler's coming back. Like I was 100% gung-ho. Then as the days kind of went by, the hours went by, I'm sure some of you guys saw it on Twitter, I was kind of like, I'm not feeling too confident anymore. Seems like Zeitler might not come back. And then a lot of people were, replying like, oh, he's just testing the market. This is just Brad's MO. He's going to let him test the market, see what he can get. He didn't come back, guys. He gone. Zeitler is out of town. Unfortunately for us and him, I would say he signed with Tennessee, who's probably not going to be very good this year. which is likely going to be his last season. Which kind of makes me wonder, was it the money? Did we not offer him enough money? I did see he's got some family in Nashville, so that could play a part in it too. But it's a big loss. But there are some guys who I think could maybe not replace him to the same level, but be pretty good players for us. Brandon Scherf, Tevin Jenkins, and Will Hernandez are kind of my top three free agents right now available at guard. And obviously the draft, we have pretty decent interior O-line throughout the first 3 rounds. I would say after that, it gets a little iffy. There's some guys like Jared Wilson that I'm a fan of. Couple guys later on that you could get that might be solid, but you definitely need to sign a vet because they're not going to start year one. But with that being said, we still have some, time to go. It's only the second day of free agency actually being open. So we'll just kind of see how this goes. Hopefully Brad has a plan to shore up the guard spot. I just don't feel comfortable trotting out Graham Glasgow and Christian Mahogany. I like them. They're good players, but just don't feel comfortable with that on a Super Bowl team. And then last but not least, safety depth. Okay, we lost Ife Melifonwu to the Miami Dolphins on a 1-year, $4 million contract. I think we're going to draft one. Okay, the safety class isn't like amazing. It's not going to blow your mind or anything, but there's some guys you could get in the 4th or 5th round that could take that iffy role. And there's some guys, left in free agency too. So we'll kind of see how that goes. I know Brad's got a plan. I just know he does. I know he's making calls. He's working shit out with his guys. He's like, okay, what are we doing here? What are we doing there? And unfortunately for us, guys are falling off the board as it's happening. So hopefully we'll make it at least. If we don't sign an edge, we better sign a guard and vice versa. Like, that's how I feel right now. If you don't sign either, we're fucking ourselves in the draft because we do not have 2 first-round picks anymore. We don't have, the top, top capital to give up to do anything. So we have the 28th overall pick, and then we have a 2nd-round pick, and then we have a 3rd-round compensatory pick. So that's end of the 3rd round, basically a 4th rounder. We got to make some moves in free agency if we want to win the Super Bowl. And I'm not saying we need to go make splashes, but I'm saying depth is key, as we saw with the injuries last time. So with that being said, James, I will pass it over to you. It looks like we may have lost Brad, unfortunately, but the floor is yours.
Yeah, thanks, Jason. A lot to unpack there. I want to start with Onzarike, and I don't want to go too far in depth because I am literally in the middle of writing an article that you guys can go check out at mysportsmedia.com after this. Actually, by the time this airs, it'll be out. However, this is courtesy of Benjamin Slowik. I destroyed his name, but sorry. He pointed out on X today that these are numbers in terms of pressure rate among defensive tackles that have signed new contracts this free agency period. Milton Williams has a pressure rate of 12.5. Tershawn Wharton has a pressure rate of 8.2. Javon Kinlaw has a pressure rate of 6.9. And Levi Onwuzurike has a pressure rate of 9.7. So out of those 4, Onwuzurike is a good 1.5% above second, who is Wharton. Now, their new contracts. Williams signed for $26 million per year at his 12.5 pressure rate. Wharton signed his deal at $18 million per year for his 8.2 pressure rate. And Kinlaw signed $15 million per season at a 6.9 pressure rate, which brings me back to Onwuzurike with his 9.7 pressure rate and only $5.5 million. So in terms of bang for your buck, he is only less than 3% behind Milton Williams, but 21 or $20.5 million per year less than Williams in terms of payroll. So Brad Holmes does it again. Onwuzurike had a terrible back injury in college. I have talked to several Lions fans who kind of given up on him. I know some people say he had a good year last year, but that's 1 out of 3 or whatever. That was the first year he was healthy. Like he is a damn good football player, and his best year was the Lions' defensive line's worst year. So without Hutch, without McNeil, without Kaminsky, without these depth pieces, without Davenport, he still had his best year. So going back to what you said in terms of and what we've talked about in past podcasts, if you give him McNeil, Hutch, and then insert rookie, free agent, whoever, or even just Davenport if he's healthy, he's not going to demand the double teams at least right away, and he is gonna hopefully feast. He gave us a glimpse of it, and I feel like the 1 year deal was Enrique's idea because I think he knows he's going to have a good year, and I think he knows he's going to get paid bank in the following off season. So he might be 5.5 million this year, but he might be a $20 million guy next year. So I wanted to point out those numbers with the contract. It's a low risk. I mean, even if something happens to him, just kind of like the Davenport, which I wanted to talk about last podcast, but we were over on our time. I know a lot of people are down on Davenport. I understand. I personally was not going to have him back just because I assumed he was going to get more than that. But if I'm not mistaken, his base salary is only 1.5 million, and with incentives, it is up to 4.75. So even if he hits all of his incentives, even if he hits all of that stuff, he's still less than 5 million. And I'm preaching constantly about it. For the right price, I'll take about almost anyone, and that is definitely the right price, and or at least a price I have no issues with. So even though I wasn't the biggest fan when I heard he came back, once I saw the deal, that's a steal. You can't go wrong with that. Brad Holmes, per usual, is cooking. And then the other thing I wanted to touch on, like you said, is the safety depth. Potentially lack thereof since we lost Melvin Fonru. I know we obviously have Kirby Joseph and Brian Branch. Branch can play and has played that nickel position fairly often, which opens up when Melanfanu got healthy. Branch moved from safety to nickel, so that way Melanfanu could play. Um, my big thing, and once again, maybe it's just tea leaves, maybe it's destiny, maybe I'm just full of crap. But the compensatory pick we got for Aaron Glenn is pick 102. That has been announced. That's what pick we are getting for him. Kirby Joseph was pick 97 in his draft. So, I mean, I realize it's 5 picks later, but we can get a safety right around that pick 100 mark. That's pretty damn good. So, I'm not going to lose my confidence, lose my faith, or even freak out about it. I was worried that the Lions were not being as aggressive as I wanted them to be. And then when I kind of just sat back, looked at the big picture, looked at past off seasons, how they conducted themselves, and looked at how they're doing it this year, it's the same MO. It's the same thing. I remember being upset with them last off season that they weren't super aggressive in free agency, and it worked out pretty damn well. I know we didn't win a playoff game and everyone's upset, but if we didn't have the injuries, I mean, I understand if wishes were fishes, the world would be an ocean. But we could have had, and we did have a special season. We even with the injuries, we were 15-2, guys. Like, calm down, let Brett Holmes do his thing. He clearly knows what he's doing. I don't know if you, the viewer, or you, Jace, have seen the Inside the Den episode they just released last night about the coaching staff. After watching that, I have so much faith in this front office, this franchise, this coaching staff. Everyone is on the same page. Everyone talks about the not only player chemistry but the coaching chemistry, and I think we're in for another damn good show and another damn good season. I know the Vikings and the Bears have been spending and just buying players left and right. We don't have to do that because we're better than them. They have to do drastic decision makings like that to catch up to us. All we have to do is get healthy, have this draft class come in, get acclimated to the team, and go to work.
Yeah, and that's a really good point. I mean, a lot of people, like you said, are kind of freaking out right now because pass rushers are falling off the board and everything. But like you said, we just need to get healthy, bring in some guys with the draft. I still think we need to obviously sign depth in free agency, but we don't need to go make splashes, like the most splashy thing that I want right now is a Von Miller for like a 1 year, 12 million or something like that. And that's just because that's a guy who can be across from Hutch on that 3rd and 12, who can rush the damn passer. Like that's all I'm asking for at this point. And maybe get a veteran guard. And another thing I didn't bring up was wide receiver 3. We still need to go and get another wide receiver. So I also wouldn't be surprised if we do that in the draft as well, because it's not the deepest draft at wide receiver, but you can find somebody in the 4th or 5th round that can, fill that Tim Patrick role and, just kind of make it work there. But with that being said, now we can pivot to our last thing of the day, NFL rumors as a whole. And this should be somewhat quick. There's not really too much going on outside of obviously free agency, but I feel like everybody kind of knows what's going on for the most part. So we won't sit here and talk about every single deal that's happened. But the big things, obviously the quarterback carousel. Daniel Jones signed with the Colts. Told you, knew that would happen. I think it was like Monday or Sunday they came out and were like, "Oh, Daniel Jones is in between the Vikings and the Colts," and I was like, "I think he ends up in Indy," and everybody commented and was like, "Why the hell would he want to go to Indy over Minnesota? He'll be the starter in Minnesota. They're a better team, and this and that." And I said, "Well, JJ is gonna start as soon as he's ready." Okay.
Yep.
I mean, literally at the moment that they see JJ in practice and they think he might be ready, he's gonna be the guy. And I would bet money that the Colts offered Daniel more money. I mean, I think what happened is Daniel probably got like a 1 year, 8 to 10 million max from the Vikings, if that, and he got 14 million, well, up to 14 million from the Colts, which is what I kind of expected because the Colts are a little bit more desperate right now. They have a guy in AR that I don't know if they really believe in. And you need a veteran presence who can kind of run the offense. And obviously, Daniel Jones is not the best guy to learn from if you're Anthony Richardson because they do have kind of similar issues. But I think Daniel offers obviously a more consistent version of it where Daniel doesn't have the arm that AR has, but he's a lot better in the intermediate stuff. And obviously the Colts aren't going to win a Super Bowl anytime soon. So I get it. Give, a true competition for your young guy that has kind of let you down a little bit. And, worst case scenario, Daniel will be his backup for a year. And I mean, we all thought he wouldn't even play in the NFL last year. And then he got picked up on the Vikings practice squad. So, excuse me. So it's just one of those things that things just kind of happen. And then moving on to the next quarterback, Aaron Rodgers. Everybody's pissed at Aaron Rodgers right now, including Adam Schefter. I don't know if you saw that. He was calling Aaron Rodgers out a little bit. I don't love it. I personally am not a fan of the way he said it because to me it just sounds like Shefty's pissed because he's got to stay up at night because Aaron Rodgers might sign when he's trying to go to bed or when he's eating dinner. You know what I'm saying? Like that's the vibe I get is he's just like, just fucking sign already and get it over so I can fucking sleep. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
and I just feel like we kind of miss the fact that these are humans. Like he's like, either you're gonna play in Pittsburgh or you're gonna play in New York. Just fucking pick one. And it's like it's not that simple, man. Pittsburgh is a lot different from New York. If you just look at the cities, like, and that's the big thing people don't take into account in this. Really, every sport, free agency or drafts or whatever. Like when someone gets traded, they don't even know it's happening until it happens. So imagine, right? You're at work and you're just doing your job, or you're at home and you get a call and say, "Hey, man, uh, uh, wherever you work, we're gonna trade you to the fucking corporate office in fucking Saskatoon. Good luck, buddy. See ya." You know what I'm saying? Like that. Sports are the only time that happens. So I just think we need to kind of take that into account a little bit more and understand that these are humans. They have to uproot their lives. Obviously, Aaron Rodgers doesn't have kids and shit, but a lot of these players do, and it's just something to take in consideration when guys aren't signing right away. There's a reason for it. And then with that being said, I do think he ends up in New York. I personally feel he just wants to see kind of what happens in free agency. I think Pittsburgh getting DK might have taken them up a little bit on his radar, which I would understand. I think they're a little bit better of a team right now too, but I just think he'd rather stay in New York. It's a little bit easier for him, and I think that's why he's taking so long because he's basically going, do I want to stay in a big city with a not great team, but I'm in New York, I'm playing for the Giants, or do I want to go and maybe try to win some more? I mean, I'd go with Pittsburgh for that reason, but I will say I've been in Pittsburgh and I don't love the city. I don't know what it is, but it's just the layout of the city is weird as fuck, and I just don't love it. Like driving through there, everything's a mountain. There's fucking hills. Like there's houses that their driveway is like literally a mountain. Like you have to drive like this to get up the bitch. I'm good, man. And if I was Aaron Rodgers, I'd be taking that into account too. But with that being said, moving on to another possible New York Giants quarterback, Russell Wilson. He's got a visit with the Cleveland Browns and the Giants this week. The Cleveland Browns, I did not see happening. They just restructured Watson to gain a bunch of cap space, but they gave him a bunch of money to do it. So they can't really move on from him. But he did just tear his ACL or his Achilles for the second time in like 3 months. So I could see him not being able to play until, week 8 or so. And maybe signing Russell Wilson would make some sense for that, but I just wouldn't go there if I was him. It's really like if Rodgers picks New York, Russ will go to Pittsburgh and vice versa. I think that's pretty much it. I don't really see Russ going to Cleveland. It's possible though. We've seen crazier things happen. And then the Cooper Cup release, I literally said he was going to be released 2 weeks ago, and people were like, "No way, that's not going to happen." Well, here we are. He's been cut. I think literally every team in the NFL should be somewhat interested for the right price, of course. But I do believe teams like, New England and Carolina should really be interested, maybe even Chicago, just because they need a more steady receiver option over there. And then moving on to the Vikings, like you mentioned, they're kind of loading up, especially on their, you know, in the trenches. They signed Will Freeze, the guard, to what was it, 17.5 million per year. They gave Javon Hargrave, the defensive tackle, I think 10 million per year. Gave Jonathan Allen, the defensive tackle, 20 million per year. I mean, they're doing good. And most people just want you to rag on the Vikings. They want you to rag on the Bears. They want you to rag on the Packers. But I'll tell you what, the Bears and the Vikings are doing some good things regardless of, our feelings about that team, they're doing good things, and I don't like it. And that's the problem. That's how you know they're doing good, because I'm like, shit, this is I don't like seeing this happen. It's like, damn, the Bears done signed two guards and a center, or traded for two guards and signed a center and got a defensive tackle and got an edge rusher. And then we got the Vikings pretty much doing the same thing. And it seems like they're both building from the trenches out. And I don't like to see teams I don't like doing the right things, making the right moves. It just pisses me off. So it's like, we'll just see what happens on the field. But right now, I don't feel too good. And then Chase Young re-signed in New Orleans, $17 million per year, right about where we thought he would. Kind of surprised he re-signed. I figured he would leave, but it is what it is. I'm not paying him $17 million a year. And then Evan Ingram to Denver. I really love this fit. That's kind of why I wanted to talk about it. 2-year deal. I think he's going to ball. I think he's going to have a great season over there with Bo Nix. They don't really have, a legit wide receiver one. I know Cortland Sutton is the wide receiver one over there, but I could see Ingram commanding a lot of those targets. And they just didn't have a good tight end last year, so I could see that really making a big difference. And then Darius Slay signed in Pittsburgh, 1 year, $10 million. Stays in Pennsylvania, at least, I guess. He said he wanted to play with Philadelphia or Detroit and ends up in Pittsburgh. So seems like Philadelphia and Detroit probably just didn't really want him, at least for the price he wanted. So is what it is on that front. I'm not too upset about that. And then Texans offensive line, don't know what they're doing there. Looks like they're going to have a bunch of backups playing guard right now. They traded their left tackle like we talked about last time. And then like I mentioned, DeMarcus Lawrence signed with Seattle, $14 million a year. And then last but not least, second to last, Kirk Cousins. Still some rumors that he might get traded because I think it's a 10 or $15 million guarantee kicks in on Sunday of this week. So they're trying to move him. I don't see it happening unless they give up picks, because that is a shit contract for a guy that can't even push off of his right leg realistically. Like when he plays, you can just tell he can't even do wide zone from under center because he has to take too many steps and he's too damn slow because of his Achilles. And that's another thing with Rodgers. I think people didn't take into account. He's 40 something years old, tore his Achilles the year before, and I think he still played okay. So I think he'll be a little bit better next year. And then the last thing I wanted to mention before I pass it over to you, James, trades. The NFL trades are going crazy right now. I feel like this is the most trades we've ever seen in like during free agency. I feel like usually we see a lot of trades before free agency and then after. Well, obviously free agency doesn't really end until the draft, but before free agency and then once the draft hits, we see a little bit more trades, and then after the draft we'll see a couple. But the big trades, the small trades, trades in general are just kind of going nuts right now. And I love to see it personally because I love to see, some shakeup happen. Um, but it seems like there's a lot of those little trades like, oh, we're going to send you this player and then we'll swap, seventh and sixth round picks or whatever the case. But still, I love to see the movement. I love to see that, teams are being a little bit more aggressive. But it also seems like they're willing to give up less draft capital for veteran players now. Unless you're like a legit all pro, you ain't getting more than like a fifth round pick anymore, it seems like. Like you have to be really damn good to command some draft capital, or you have to be young and good. So, just something to think about. But with that being said, floor is yours, James.
Yeah, I wanted to touch quickly before I forget on the trades, like you said, the small trades, teams exchanging, player for player, exchange this, something, excuse me, something small like that, or in addition to the players, we get a sixth, you get a seventh. All of those picks that right now seem, I hate to say it, but useless because someone, okay, late, super late pick in the sixth, fifth, who cares? But come draft day, everyone's thinking, who's next on the clock? Can the Lions trade back and get two picks for their one? So in time, even though it's not the focus of the trades and whatnot, in time, those are going to be crucial on draft day to see what happens with those picks. And I don't think anyone, including myself, because when I see him, I think no big deal. And then as I was sitting here, I'm like, you know what? That it kind of is. It's just on the back burner for now. It's not a big deal today. It's a big deal in April. Um, so I wanted to touch on that. Trying to go a little bit in reverse order so it's more fresh in my mind. I do not know what the Texans are doing with their O line. Uh, you had a pretty good team there. Then you completely implode your O line, which I don't know how that's going to help your franchise quarterback. I know Stroud had a fantastic rookie season, kind of a mediocre sophomore slump season, but he's not going to get better running for his life. I don't know any quarterback that will. So I'm very happy I'm not a Texans fan. I'd be losing my shit. I'm not upset that Slay went to Pittsburgh, as we talked about. I wouldn't have minded him for the right price, but I'm not even going to give it an afterthought. I'm not ruining the day that we missed out on Darius Slay now that he's, over 30 and all that. Ingram to Dallas was a nice move, like you said. I think that's one that's going to be sneaky that I don't think too many average Joes and Janes will be talking about that. But I do think by week 4 or 5, people are going to be like, hey, when did that happen? Because he's going to start catching eyes. Assuming that Bo Nix takes that next step up, which he already showed more in his rookie season than I thought he would. I did not think his game would translate to the NFL. I was wrong. I said the same thing about Jaden Daniels. I'll throw myself on that fire. I was completely unimpressed with him as a draft prospect, and I'm wrong. It happens. It'll happen again too. When I'm right, I'm right. When I'm wrong, I'm wrong. I'll own my takes. It is what it is. I'm not going to sit here and cry and try to make up excuses of why he wasn't great. He was great. I do think Rodgers is done. I don't care where he goes. I don't think, almost like, no, I'm not going to do that to him. I was going to compare him to Zeitler a little bit. Zeitler is still amazing, but he signed a 1 year deal, like you said, will probably be his last year, and he signed with a team that's one of the bottom five in the whole league. So although Zeitler himself still has it, I feel like he's hanging out with family, going through the good vibes, kind of doing a retirement tour kind of deal. Um, but he's not winning there, and that's nothing against Zeitler. Like I don't want to speak ill of him, but I do think Rodgers is done. It doesn't matter where he signs. I'm trying to think of a good team, even if they already have a quarterback that I think he could win the Super Bowl on. Like I don't even think if you put him on Philly, he's gonna do anything. Like I just don't think he has that much left in the tank. Um, I mean, I could be wrong. Obviously, that's not going to happen anyways, but I just think Rodgers, too many injuries, too old. Father time gets us all eventually. Uh, Cooper Cup, I think would be, and it's funny because it goes against what I just said, but since he's released and you no longer have to trade for him, I'm curious on if the Lions at least call him. I'm not saying the Lions should sign him. I'm not saying that we should go out there and give him a blank check, but he has a rapport with Goff, even if it's been a few years. He's caught balls by Goff before. He knows Brad Holmes. The Lions need a receiver three. Like the pieces kind of just fit for the right price. So I wouldn't go after him aggressively, but I'd pick up the phone and at least have a talk. Um, then in terms of the Vikings, I believe they gave Hargraves 15 a year, if I'm not mistaken. So they
Yeah,
gave Allen
that's right.
20 a year. They gave Hargraves 15 a year. They're both known as pocket collapsing kind of pass rush D tackles. They're both also known as somewhat of a liability versus the run. So I don't know per se if I would put those two together. I understand why you'd get one or the other, but that is a lot of money to put in your D tackle spots when you have a division that, I mean, the Bears just beefed up their O line. I'm expecting them to run the ball more. I'm expecting them to do more quarterback runs with Caleb, play action. I don't quite want to say college offense, but Brad Johnson, I remember when he came to Detroit, when he first got the offensive coordinator job for Detroit, he said he sat down with Goff and said, "What do you like to do? What do you not like to do?" And he designed his playbook around that. So that way his quarterback was always comfortable with whatever was going on. So I feel like the Bears offense is not going to look anything like the Lions pass offense. It's going to be developed and molded around uh, Williams. And I see a lot of play actions, especially with them beefing up the line. So Vikings, like I said, both are a head scratcher to me. I fully understand one or the other. Fry's hell of a guard. I know we talked about potentially adding him to the Lions if we miss out on Zeitler, but they paid him a ton. So there was just a lot of checks being passed around by the Vikings. And then the only other thing I really had was Russell Wilson. I wanted to touch on that because I just don't see a good, realistic landing spot for him. Because unlike Rodgers, in my opinion, he's still got something in the tank. His best days are behind him. But if he went to like a Vikings team or something like that, I think he can still be a leader for a playoff team with enough supporting cast around him. And with him interviewing with Cleveland or is it the Giants as the other team, I believe? I feel like if I was Russell Wilson, I would kind of hold out a little more hope for that. Maybe even sign with a contender for less money and just in case someone gets hurt because it is the NFL. But I don't see the situation in Cleveland being very good. The Giants, I could have a 20-minute roast on the Giants. So, I mean, they're just not good. And then the only other thing I really wanted to bring up before sending it back to you is while we were on the podcast, the Jets have released linebacker C.J. Mosley. And I'm just curious on what his price was because I do not know what his contract was. But I would be curious to, once again, kind of like a Cooper Cup situation, pick up the phone and call. I wouldn't go all out for him or anything like that, but I would at least call and gauge the interest level on that. I'm curious on what you think about that.
Yeah, on the CJ Mosley front, he was getting paid. I think he was getting like 17 million or 15 million a year, so it totally makes sense that they would release him. I'd pick up the phone too. Why not? Like same thing with Shaq Thompson. He's another linebacker that's available that I think for the right price, but like you said, there's a right price for anybody. So for the right price, I'd definitely bring him on just because we're one of those teams that's trying to, build for the future. Or win. I mean, win Super Bowls, not build for the future anymore. That was just Freudian slip there. Um, but and on the Aaron Rodgers front, and I think and we've talked about this before. I just disagree with the fact I don't think he's cooked. I mean, he was eighth in yards, he was seventh in touchdowns, and he only had 11 interceptions. And now, James, if you had to guess, do you think the Jets were throwing the piss out of the ball?
No, I would assume that they would run it with I'm space Brees Hall. I would figure they'd pound the
Right.
rock with Brees Hall.
That's what you'd think, right? But then you look at Aaron Rodgers' stats, and he threw it over 35 times. One, two, three, four, five, six, seven, eight, 9 times last year. And he threw it over 40 twice. He had 39 attempts three times or twice, 54 attempts in the last game against Minnesota, and he had 42 against the Rams. Now, of course, take this with a grain of salt, but I just feel personally that O line was not very good, right? They
Correct.
have some good pieces there at O line, but their tackles were pretty rough last year. And I just think that if you put Aaron Rodgers in an offense, like once they got Devontae Adams, they looked a little bit better too. But I just think if you put him in an offense that has a better O line, better coaching, I think really was a big issue for the Jets last year. They fired their head coach at like what 5 games in, 6 games in, and it just was a shit show. The owner is just Jerry Jones 2.0. And I just think that everything went wrong with the Jets. Now, I mainly bring this up to say that I think he would win a Super Bowl with the Eagles if he played for them. I'm just also not really huge on Hurts. He's a good player, don't get me wrong, but I also think Rodgers could do some things throwing the ball that Hurts can't. And I think they can maybe open up their offense a little bit that way. But I mean, other than that, call me crazy, the Lions, man. I think he could come here and do what Goff is doing. Obviously not as well, or at like such a high rate. He's not going to have almost 5,000 yards, but I think he could win. But it's just going to take, he's more of a Kirk Cousins type now. And on the Russell Wilson front, I think they're about even, in my opinion, right now. I do think I would personally prefer Russell Wilson because he has some added mobility. But even then, it's like very close for me. But with that being said, that's really all I got. If you have anything else to say before we close out.
Yeah, I took a peek at Roger's stats here for myself, and I mean, obviously, like you said, you're right, and I would like to walk back slightly, because being top 10 in yards and touchdowns with only 11 interceptions is pretty damn good. Maybe it was a volume thing. I will say his QBR was only 25th best. But yeah, I mean, he does have better stats than I would have thought. So I will walk back some of the hate. Maybe it's just lingering inside me from all the Green Bay days. But yeah, those are better numbers than I would have thought with that offense and whatnot. So I will double tap and say my bad on that for the most part. I mean, they're still not his prime numbers, of course, but those are better than I was thinking that he had, to be fair. That being said, he's still not going to win with the Giants. But
No, definitely not. And that's why I kind of would definitely, if I was him, I'd definitely be looking at Pittsburgh more than the Giants. Because if he
well,
goes
yeah,
to the Giants, he's kind of he's cooked if he goes to the Giants. I mean, it's over with. He really has no chance to do much of anything. And with the QBR thing, I thought the same. That's kind of an atrocious QBR, but that's kind of why I brought up the attempts. And actually, I lied because he threw over 35 in 11 games. I was wrong, not just 9. He had 42 against Denver and 35 against New England as well. 584 attempts on a season where he was 41 and had just torn his Achilles. I just think if you look at it that way, it seems to me like the Jets were just saying, "Go be Rodgers, man. Go be that elite guy we know you are." Well, he's not anymore, unfortunately. So it's a little late for that. But with that being said, that's going to do it for this one. We appreciate you guys for watching. Michigan Sports Media Network, as always. Follow us on Twitter at MI Sports Media. James will be at Gullet_James. I am at JSoSweet. And Brad, unfortunately, who we lost halfway through the show, he is at BT8Ball. And then you can find us at misportsmedia.com for all of our articles, our news updates, and all that. But with that being said, thank you for watching, and we will see you guys on the next one.